For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and that of the gospel will save it. This Bible is seemingly filled with a lot of contradictions like this. Today's gospel is no exception. It's because the way of God differs so much from the way of man. Our world is filled with examples of reaching the top, competition amongst ourselves, and not being taken advantage of. Today's gospel is saying just the opposite. Love your enemies. Be good to those who hate you. People who are your enemies, who hate you, mistreat you, curse you, strike you, steal from you. And we're supposed to love them, be good to them, bless them, pray for them, and give them more when we're being taken advantage of or mistreated by them. Then there is the idea of reciprocity, doing something for mutual benefit. I mean, come on, let's face it. When we love our enemies, we expect our enemies to love us. If we do good to others, we expect them to be good to us. If we bless and pray for them, we expect them to pray for us and to bless us as well. We're expecting to be treated by others now as we are treating them. Well, that doesn't always happen. So where's the justice? Like us, the disciples probably had a hard time with this themselves. In the Old Testament, hatred of evil persons was assumed to be right. Jesus extends the commandment of love to the enemy and the persecutor. In essence, Jesus is terminating the law of Moses. Jesus showed during his passion while he was hanging on the cross. He forgave them, he prayed for them, knowing that he will not get anything in return from them. He sacrificed his life for us. In turn, our lives are to be a living sacrifice, giving us the ability to overcome conformity to the world. Jesus was trying to tell us the things that happen to us now, things that we do now, won't necessarily pay off here on earth, but will pay off through our reward after this life. Our payment is non-material, it's spiritual, not a physical payment. When you look at these things in the gospel today, they make more sense when you realize that our next phase of life, our spiritual life, is more like an extension of our present physical life. Now our life is physical, but it contains the hidden spirituality as well. Spiritual life goes beyond our physical, and yet we very rarely expose the spiritual component of our life. What's difficult for us is to make our spiritual life have more of an impact on our physical life. Our judgment day for everyone, will happen at the end of this life. When we think of reward, we think in earthly terms. God doesn't think that way. It is not a one-for-one payment. It's not like lending $10 to someone and expecting $10 in return with maybe a little bit of interest. The rewards that God gives us goes beyond our human desires and expectations. Our payment extends beyond this earthly life. That's what God was trying to tell us way back in the Old Testament in the experiences of Job. Jesus said the greatest commandments are to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind, and to love your neighbor. Jesus is showing how we can be justified through faith in this world. Love brings unity. How can we love if we're not merciful? How can we love if we're judgmental? How can we love if we cannot forgive? It's not that we shouldn't recognize the faults of others. After all, that's how we sometimes learn about ourselves. It's more about honesty. We should be as quick in holding ourselves accountable as we are in criticizing the faults of others. Otherwise, we might miss seeing our own faults that could be greater than those of somebody else. We shouldn't judge others because our judgment is usually based on arrogance, and we tend to forget about our own faults or don't want to admit to our own faults. Leave judgment to God. God will ultimately deal justly with all, including those who inflict injury on others. In today's first reading, David is a great example of love because even though he is hated, pursued like an enemy, and hunted down by Saul, he shows his love for God through his action of mercy. There are a lot of times that I have difficulty. The expectations of ourselves, what we perceive as expectations from our parents, from our spouses, from our society, are so different from the expectations of God. Those expectations are a product of the way we were raised in our individual experiences. Our parents and our families are not perfect, and society is far from perfect. But the expectations for ourselves is to match the expectation of God, to overcome some of the things that we've learned in the past for the pursuit of holiness, to become more than who our parents were, our society is, who we are now. In the words of Pope Francis, we all have a great need to be a bit more merciful, to not speak ill of others, to not judge, to not sting others with criticism, with envy, and jealousy. Love is the fulfillment of God's law. Our job is to do the best we can to bring God's plan of love to those around us.